Back at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, Bob Varsha, Derek Daly, and Marty Reid with you for the Nissan Grand Prix of Ohio. The field is rolling off, and you can see just how wet it is on the racetrack, Derek.
And it's always a bad sign when you can see the reflection of the official as he walks down the pit lane. You can see his reflection in the roadway. It's going to be very, very wet.
Here's a look at our Sears Die-Hard starting grid, and listen to this mechanical lineup. On the pole, Davy Jones in the 3.5-liter normally aspirated V8 Jaguar XGR 14 with a record lap at 115.953 miles an hour. Next to him, second in points, Juan Manuel Fangio II in the 2.1-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder Toyota Eagle Mark III. On row 2, Jeff Brabham, the 4-time series champion in a twin-turbo V6 Nissan NPT 91B. 3 victories here at Mid-Ohio. Next to him will be young Canadian David Tennyson in the Denon Chevy-Spice, a 6-liter normally aspirated small block Chevy V8. On row 3 will be P.J. Jones, son of the 1963 Indy 500 champion in a second Toyota. When you've got a son of Parnelli Jones teamed up with a Fangio racing for a gurney, it doesn't get any better than that if you're a race fan. Next to him will be Oscar Larari, Juan Fangio's countryman from Argentina, in a 3-liter twin-turbo water-cooled Porsche 962C. On row 4, from Colorado, Bryce Cobb in the 4-rotor Mazda RX 792P. That's the same engine that took Mazda to victory in the 24 Hours of Le Mans last summer. Next to Cobb will be his Mazda teammate, Pete Halsmer, injured in a crash at Road Atlanta, came back to take a 3rd place at Lime Rock Park just 5 days ago. On row 5, Italian Gianpiero Moretti will team with countryman Massimo Sigala in a car that rivals the Jag and the Mazda for best looking on the grid, the beautiful red and yellow Momo Porsche 962C. At his elbow will be Parker Johnstone, the pole sitter in the Camel Lights class, teamed with Dan Marvin from California, 3-liter V6 non-turbocharged Acura-Spice. On row 6, Charles Morgan from Arkansas, teamed with Florida's Tommy Riggins in a Scandia Perry Ellis 3.4-liter V6 Buick Kudzu chassis. Next to him will be Ruggero Malgrati of Italy, teamed with Greek Kostas Los in the second Comtech Acura-Spice. Moving on to row 7 in the 13 spot, Fermín Velez of Spain, a former world champion in this class of car, teamed with American Andy Evans in a Buick-powered Kudzu chassis. Next to them, the dark horse, as Marty Reid mentioned, Tommy Kendall in the 6.5-liter EDS Chevy GTP, dominator in qualifying in this series just 1 year ago. On row 8, the winners in the Camel Lights class at Sebring, Tim McAdam from Colorado, teamed with Jim Downing, the 3-time Camel Lights champion in the Bel-Ray Oil Buick Kudzu. Next to them, another Camel Lights competitor, Mark Rodriguez from California, teamed with David Roca in the Fuji-sponsored Buick Spice chassis. Moving on to row 9, Craig Carter, long a competitor in the sedan classes in IMSA Racing, will team with Bobby Brown in the Ultratech Buick-powered Taiga chassis. Next to them, in the final qualifying position, will be Bob Shader from Colorado, teamed with Tom Hessert from New Jersey in the GTE Mobile-Dead Motorola Buick-powered Spice chassis. Derek, you know this course well. Tell us about it.
It's a very, very good road course, one of the finest in America. A lot of money been spent over the last couple of years resurfacing and widening this racetrack. The safety features are very, very good, well liked by the drivers. We can take a look at a course map here. The first key is the keyhole, one of the slowest corners on the racetrack. It's a 2nd-gear corner leading down to the fastest part of the racetrack, 170 miles an hour before very heavy braking, and then through the S's, up and down, elevation changes, right and left sweeps, very fast. Then we come down the back section. There's a lot of trees overhanging here. Track surface very slippery through the carousel. Again, a 2nd-gear corner leading onto the front pit straight.
And because that pit straight is so short, the fields take the green flag on the long backstretch. In the middle of your picture, Davy Jones in the Jaguar leads the field down. IMSA's flagman Jim Sidley has the green rag in hand. Looks like we'll get a start. Watch for the rooster tails as Davy Jones dives down toward the first corner.
And a great instant jump start by Davy Jones. Remember, he is in a normally aspirated car. That's why the turbo car is so lazy and slow off the line here. Also, the turbos have to be very careful of wheel spin in such wet weather conditions.
You can see the car is just tippy-toeing. They'd be going about 60 miles an hour faster through this corner. There you see the 98 Toyota going backward, perhaps a missed shift for P.J. Jones.
Oh, looked like a scary moment for Jones. He got the car sideways at the top of the hill, slip slide, made a couple of corrections, got back on track, but lost a couple of positions.
There is Price Cobb in the number 77 Mazda, a team that had so much trouble getting that totally new car on the racetrack this year. Went all the way to Road Atlanta, round 4, before it actually turned a wheel in competition.
And visibility is the thing we mentioned right at the top of the show. These rooster tails behind the cars cause tremendous problems for the following driver. Davy Jones has such an advantage right now because he's out running clear of everybody, and visibility for him is the best right now.
Saw the white and blue car of Tom Kendall trying to move up from that 14th starting spot. Meanwhile, out front, listen to the sound of this V8 Jaguar. Waving into the corners, Derek.
And we saw the wide line he's taking. He moves away from that normal racing line that has oil and rubber on it from dry running conditions. That gets very slippery, so they move to the high side and often is very much faster. Just look at the rooster tails and the visibility problem down this back straight.
There is Price Cobb running in 5th position just behind Oscar Larari. And that's something we failed to mention as we get back to the lead. Davy Jones, you see the interval he's already opened up just 2 laps in. The wet surface and what that means to a driver coming up on another driver in an emergency situation.
Oh, in an emergency situation, you can close on somebody, particularly if the driver ahead of you is in trouble. You can close on them so fast because, remember, sometimes the only thing you pick out is the red rain light they run on the back of these cars. Now, we can't see it here, but you might see this Cobb goes through here. The red light looks like a brake light. You just about see it. That gives you an idea how difficult it is even to pick the red light out.
There is Davy Jones, the leader, tiptoeing through the carousel. Hard left-hander up onto the start-finish straightaway.
You can hear the sound, 3.5-liter V8. This is a development of the Cosworth Formula 1 engine. That's why it sounds so nice. It's a very high-revving engine. Remember, this is a lightweight Group C car that has been adapted to IMSA regulations.
Best battle on the racetrack. 4th place, Oscar Larari in the white number 7 Porsche against the 77 Mazda of Price Cobb.
Windscreen wipers working. You see the camera lens there. It's raining so heavily at the moment, it's difficult to keep the camera lenses clean. But Price Cobb now on the wheel tracks of Larari.
There's the leader, Davy Jones, heading down the back straight.
Real good idea how these ground effects cars work by looking at that plume of water coming out of the back of the car and sucked upwards, which shows you that the car is actually being sucked down to the ground, creating the downforce. But Fangio still hanging on to Davy Jones and Jeff Brabham at distant 3rd.
And then the white, red, and blue Porsche. Then the Mazda of Price Cobb. And it looks like David Tennyson coming up in the Chevy-powered Spice chassis.
Tennyson, another normally aspirated car, should be slightly easier to drive in these rainy conditions. The turbo cars, when the turbo boosts, if you have any lag and then the horsepower comes on, remember you've got 700 horsepower, suddenly rushes in, which makes it very difficult.
There's the battle for the leading Camel Lights. The day glow orange and white car is Parker Johnstone. The blue number 44, Fermín Vélez of Spain. Guillermo Grati has the other Acura-Spice car in 3rd place.
Parker Johnson so dominant in this class all last year. Now the competition gets a little bit hotter, particularly with Vélez. I know Parker Johnson hopes that this team will move into the GTP ranks someday soon, but at the moment, he's still dominant, one of the dominant drivers in this GT light class. You
mentioned the Ford Cosworth engine, now rebadged as a Jaguar, sitting in Davy Jones's car. Here comes Craig Carter with a problem early on.
Started 17th. One of the biggest problems you have here is that the electrics can get wet. It'll be interesting to see what end of the car they go to. It looks like they're going to go, well, we can't tell yet, but the electrics, keeping them sealed from all the water is often a big problem.
It's like a right front tire problem on that car. Meanwhile, just over on the other side of the pit wall, here is the race leader, Davy Jones, putting Craig Carter a lap down.
That engine is just so good for the true race fan. They just want to come here and listen to this Cosworth V8 rev about 11,000 or 12,000 revs. Now look what's happening here. It's not a dry line, but there is a line beginning to emerge, which everybody will end up following as we go back to Craig Carter, who still sits in the pits with nothing happening.
Tough break for Craig Carter and his co-driver Bobby Brown, who waits on the wall for his opportunity to get in the car. Could be a hub problem at the right front corner. I thought it was the tire.
Hub, maybe brakes. Looks like they're attempting to bleed those brakes. I'm surprised the brakes would get that warm on a day like today, but that may be the problem.
Davy Jones in the spectacular Jaguar XJR 14. No other series in road racing offers the diversity of the Camel GT series. I mentioned 18 different cars in this field. If you count them up, only 3 share any one engine and chassis combination.
Sorry, Bob, back to the great Camel Lights battle is still Parker Johnstone. Now, he's got to watch what's going on behind him as well as ahead of him, because Fermin Velez will make, in fact, he looks down the inside. Very risky move here.
Hard braking for a sharp right-hand corner coming up. Velez thinks twice about it and settles back in second place in the lights class. You can see some of the crowd gathered here. 2 days of on and off downpour have done nothing to still the energy of this crowd.
Oh, a risky move here. Velez comes down the inside. It's so difficult to come down off the racing line because there's more water and it's very difficult to stop the car. But Velez looks to be very anxious to make a move on Parker Johnstone.
Nearly all these cars on Goodyear rain tires, but even a rain tire with the thick tread are not likely to help you if you hit a puddle.
Aquaplaning is one of the biggest enemies of drivers when they drive in the rain, because when you aquaplane, you get on top of the water, you lose traction, you lose grip on the road surface, and then the driver becomes a passenger. Basically, the control of the car has gone away from him.
Parker Johnstone in that orange and white Acura-Spice, the defending Camel Lights champion from Redmond, Oregon, man who once won 6 national championships in various minor classes. There's the second place car, Fermin Velez, who won a world championship in this kind of machine. Nobody knows these cars better than he does. We'll be back for more action from the Nissan Grand Prix of Ohio. Davy Jones leads. Screaming down the backstretch at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, Davy Jones, just 28 years old, already a 14-year veteran of international racing. He leads the race. This is the battle for 9th place. In the Porsche, Gianpiero Moretti of Italy coming up fast. In the white and blue Chevy, Tommy Kendall.
And we mentioned earlier, when you go down the inside, you go off what is the racing line. It's very wet, but Kendall got down onto that line, was able to maintain the grip and actually made that pass. The biggest disadvantage, of course, for Kendall is coming from the back, trying to pass the slower cars with the tremendous visibility problems he's having.
Tommy Kendall says he's fit, and he appears to be. Recovered from severe leg injuries. Looks like his windshield wiper has stopped working. Tommy hurt badly in a savage head-on crash with the wall at Watkins Glen a year ago, but he looks to be right back on pace coming through the field. Now here is Davy Jones in a car that didn't turn a wheel until Saturday, qualifying in the rain. Before that, we asked Davy how you set up for these conditions.
You either like it to be wet or you like it to be dry, and you know, you can either go with a wet setting or a dry setting, but when the weather is iffy like this, you really want to tend to favor the dry setting in case you do, you know, get a dry line and able to go onto slick tires.
As I said, that was well before the race. Then the weather is iffy. No question about the weather now, Derek.
And I hope he has the wet weather settings on, because this is the dry weather setup, and he still blows everybody away. They're in deeper trouble than they even think or realize.
Now, this is a car that won the Sports Car World Championship a year ago. There were rules provisions in the IMSA regulations allowing a car like this to run, and using what are known as the Group C underbody tunnels that provide downforce to the car, they're allowed to run it at 1,650 pounds. A lot of the competitors think that explains the car's domination of the series. Too powerful and too light. It'll be required to weigh 50 pounds more at the next stop on the Camel GT series, but a lot of the competitors think that's not near enough extra weight.
I'll be curious to monitor to see what happens, but remember, some of the cars he's racing against are the Porsche that we see here of Larrauri and Jeff Brabham, who are really in cars that are 2 years old. Look at Larrauri, slides down the inside of Brabham. Now look at the line Larrauri's on, makes his own new tracks, very slippery down there. Brabham doesn't even give up, but Larrauri takes the position.
That is 3rd place. You saw Jeff Brabham had a notion about staying around the outside, but it didn't work. Oscar Larrauri moves up into 3rd place. Porsche 962C and its 956 predecessor, virtually 11 years old as a design concept in 1992. There you see a picture of Oscar Larrauri, a man with world sports car and Formula One driving experience. He drove for Swiss millionaire Walter Brune for many years.
Of course, course, the Porsche factory in Germany stopped competing in World Championship Group C racing themselves, so all these 962s now are run very much by private teams. And on a day like today, oh, we have somebody in the wall, one of the Camel Lights cars.
Mark Rodriguez from California, the number 55 car, looks like he's trying to get away, and he's hooked the wing on that netting that holds the tire barrier together.
That's right, the netting is very necessary because when cars make contact, the tires don't fly all over the place, but he is definitely caught in that netting. He's going to have to get some help from one of the track marshals if he's going to get out of there.
Rodriguez stays in the car. Yeah, they're working on the net. They're going to pull off the netting. We'll see if he can get the car refired and back on the track. You can see from all the tire marks in the turf that there has been a lot of agricultural racing. It has been wet all weekend here at Mid-Ohio, and Rodriguez back in action. Meanwhile, the battle for the Camel Lights lead. The white and orange car, Parker Johnstone. The blue car, number 44, Fermin Velez. Down the back stretch they go.
This is definitely a good battle. It's been going on now for 3 or 4 laps. Velez tried to get down the inside before. He comes closer this time. He's doing exactly what Larari did to Brabham, and he pulls it off, gets down the inside. This is the end of the long back straight.
That would appear to be the preferred passing place in the rain. Over the rise, through the S's.
Fermin Velez really has shaken up this class. Remember, it was so dominant last year by Parker Johnstone. Velez is a very talented driver. This Buick Kudzu certainly gives him the tools he needs to do the job. And now suddenly Parker Johnstone and now his teammate have to fight for their positions.
Here's another look at the pass. Johnstone on the right, Velez on the left.
Johnstone stays very, very wide. I think he realized that Velez was down the inside. Ooh, he challenges a little bit, but Velez slides across, takes the position, and there's no argument. Now look at Parker Johnstone's in trouble from his teammate.
Here comes Ruggero Melgrati of Italy in the Acura-Spice with the striped headlight covers. Maybe a problem for Parker Johnstone. Melgrati looking for a way by.
Johnstone is slow down the straight, so we can only assume that maybe he has a power problem, maybe he has a misfire, there's so much water around, but it was so easy for Melgrati to make the pass there. We can only assume that in the power department, or getting the power to the road, Johnstone has a problem.
Well, it remains to be seen whether Parker Johnstone can get back in the Camel Lights act. Meanwhile, Davy Jones leads Juan Fangio in the GTP division. Sports car course. Here comes the SS Bud Light Jaguar. Davy Jones, skipper, leading the race as he has since the green flag. Coming around Mark Rodriguez, who we saw in the tire barrier just a few laps ago. Now here in the blue and white Chevy, number 12, comes Tommy Kendall, who started 14th in this field, challenging the number 78 Mazda of Pete Halsmer for 8th.
And this is up in the keyhole. It's such a risky move to slide down the inside. Halsmer makes him work hard for the position, stays with him all the way through the corner. And now it's a drag race down the back straight, which the V8 Chevrolet is about to win over the rotary Mazda.
Gotta believe all you have to do is get that rooster tail into the windshield of the guy you're trying to pass, and the pass is about complete.
So Tommy Kendall, he really is the man on the move here. Started so far back, has done a great job. And now we're back with Brabham trying to hold off the other Mazda, which is Price Cobb.
This is for 4th place, behind Davy Jones, Juan Fangio, and Oscar Larari. The top 5 cars are Jaguar, Toyota, Porsche, this Nissan, and Mazda.
Jeff Brabham, who has been so successful here at Mid-Ohio in the past, struggling today with a car that really is not up to par with the latest designs. And one of those latest designs, of course, is this new Mazda. Oh, our friend Rodriguez is off the road again at the same spot.
At the very same spot, he gets it back on the track. Long day for Mark Rodriguez from Toluca Lake, California. Here's another look.
What happened is he actually moved over. He was a bit of a gentleman and put himself into trouble. Moved over to get out of the way of P.J. Jones. Almost takes out Tommy Kendall. So trying to be a nice boy actually put him into deep trouble.
Coming down the long back stretch. Rooster tails still flying as the rain continues to fall. Here comes Juan Fangio in the white number 99 Toyota, running in 2nd place.
And he's not that far behind Davy Jones now. Jones might have slowed down to let traffic get along its way and not get into trouble, but Fangio definitely closing up on Jones at this stage.
And mentioned that Fangio and Jones are tied with 2 victories apiece. Actually, Fangio, the only driver with 2 victories. This man, Davy Jones, collected maximum points in the first round in Daytona Beach, Florida, but did not win the race. The Nissan that won was ineligible for points. Here comes Juan Fangio, just 9 points behind Davy Jones for the championship in this race.
And probably at the moment not more than 9 seconds behind Davy Jones, moving back to his teammate P.J. Jones, who's still trying to hold off Tommy Kendall, the charging Tommy Kendall.
Windshield wipers flapping away. P.J. Jones, son of Parnelli Jones, brother of Paige Jones. Tommy Kendall draws in close right on his rear wing.
PJ looked to be very slow up that hill. Kendall got a good run at him, but wasn't actually able to make the pass.
Tommy Kendall trying to annex 7th place. Got one of the Camel Lights cars in front of him.
He hopes now that Jones is going to get slowed down by that Camel Light, because if he can't make the pass himself, oh, Kendall gets her sideways, under power, big twitch coming out over the top of the hill, but very, very anxious to catch and attack and pass P.J. Jones.
That's Parker Johnstone just ahead of him. Johnstone continuing to have trouble in the Camel Lights classes. Jones closes in. Kendall just behind him, picking up the battle as they come on to the front straightaway.
Camel Light car will be slow at the front straight. That will hold up P.J. Jones.
Through the spray they come. I wondered if Kendall had seen Parker Johnstone just ahead of him. And that's just what P.J. Jones wanted, get the slower car in between them.
Exactly. Kendall twitches again. Uh-oh, here's our friend again, Craig Carter, out of the race finally. Made a pit stop earlier, we did see that, and now decides to call it a day.
Meanwhile, Tommy Kendall trying to get around Parker Johnstone, and he does on the back straightaway. He can close up under braking, but he's going to have to be very careful.
Look how much time he lost though, trying to get past Parker Johnstone. He got caught up in the keyhole, had to go around behind Johnstone, lost about 7 or 8 car lengths to P.J. Jones, but he's faster at the moment, so he will catch him.
There goes P.J. Jones. Here comes Tommy Kendall. This car known as the Chevrolet GTP, and Kendall loses the handle and goes in a loop and stays on the racetrack.
Oh, we saw Kendall twitch earlier on. Under heavy acceleration, the car began to get away from him right here on this corner. And now, a lap later, he doesn't quite catch it. Slides a nice lazy 360. Luckily, he didn't leave the racetrack. Here it is. He's on the concrete patch when he loses control. Too much power. But look what happens here. There's a nice lazy 360. Luckily, he didn't get on the grass, because sometimes the cars can feel to accelerate on the grass. Gets it back on, loses only about 10 seconds. Now the P.J. Jones chase starts all over again, but look at Jones.
Davy Jones and the number 2 Bud Light Jaguar pulls up on Tommy Kendall's right door handle, but Kendall will challenge him up into the S's.
Oh, risky move for Davy Jones. He can't get the pass. Oh, he can't get it done. Now he tries to come down the inside under braking, and he makes it an inside under Kendall under braking.
This is the same part of the course where Kendall spun just 1 lap earlier.
Here we have modern-day racing engines in the Jaguar and old-day racing engines in the Chevrolet V8. How old is that design?
Well, that small block Chevrolet goes all the way back about 35 years or so. Of course, Tommy Kendall has a very new iteration. We'll be back for more from Mid-Ohio. Back at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, Bob Varsha, Marty, Reid, Derek Daly with you. Here comes the 2nd place Toyota Eagle Mark III, driven by Juan Fangio II of Argentina.
And still able to keep a good close eye on Davy Jones, because Jones is not that far ahead. In fact, here's Jones now trying to put a lap on Prix Cobb, who's now running in 6th place.
Prix Cobb has been passed by Canadian David Tennyson. Meanwhile, the Camel Lights battle, Fermin Velez in the 2nd of those 2 cars. The one ahead of him is Jim Downing, about to be lapped. Velez leads Rogero Melgrati and Parker Johnstone, the teammates with the Acura squad. 44 is Velez, 63 is Downing. These are identical chassis known as DG2s, designed by Sam Garrett, built in Jim Downing's shops in Atlanta. They're called kudzu, named after a weed that was imported to the southeast United States by Jim Downing's father many years ago. If you've ever been in the South and you see trees absolutely overcome by what looks like ivy, that is kudzu. And you can eat it.
And And this is very definitely an educational program also.
I can promise you Fermin Velez has never eaten kudzu. But right now he's driving one in first place in the Camel Lights class. Keep in mind there is a drivers and manufacturers championship at stake. Manufacturers being engine manufacturers. Right now in the Camel Lights class, Buick trails Acura. So if Fermin Velez can hold on over the Acura teammates Melgrati and Johnstone, it'll be a big boost in their hope for manufacturers' honors. Here comes Mark Rodriguez, who we've seen off the racetrack twice thus far today. Behind him, Velez, hoping to put a lap on another Camel Lights competitor.
And these kudzu Buicks really have changed the face of the Camel Lights series this year. It was very boring last year. Boring because there was only one winner, as P.J. Jones makes the first of his pit stops.
Marty Reid is there.
This is an unscheduled stop for P.J. Jones. You can probably see that there is fog building up on the inside of the cockpit. The defroster is not working, so the guys are going to try and put a little fluid in there to take care of it, wipe it off. They're also going to give him a handmade squeegee to take care of it for himself if he gets any stalls the car as he goes out. So the crew tries to get him pushed back underway. This could be costly.
Trying to get a handle on that squeegee, he'll get you every time in the pits.
And ventilation can be one of the major problems in a wet race like this. Lack of ventilation on the inside causes the windscreen to fog up. The driver cannot see. He has no choice but to stop in the pit lane.
Meanwhile, up front, everything seems to be going well for Davy Jones. We heard from Davy a little earlier, giving us his version of how you set up for dry versus wet weather conditions. Marty Reid has more about car setup, taking a closer look at subjects technological in the IMSA Camel GT Series. Here's Marty with a track fact. Track facts are brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil.
What you're looking at is a surface plate, also known as a scale pad, and it serves two purposes for each race team. Now, anytime you go into a racetrack, of course, the concrete is not going to be perfectly even, so that's what these adjustable screws do, so that they can balance out the plate, getting the ride heights just perfect. Now, the scale pads on all four corners help with the balance and the cornering weights of the car. For example, take a look at the stool. You can see here how when it's not right, you go into a left-hander. Well, that puts all the weight on the right front. The left side's going to lock up. You end off into the toolies. Get the balance right on all four corners of the car, and you got yourself a chance of winning a race.
Well, the best setup on the racetrack is owned by that red, white, and blue number 2 car. Davy Jones challenging P.J. Jones here, trying to put him another lap down.
And such a risky thing for Jones to do, to try and go down the inside. Now he's on the outside, and he just about makes the pass. He's lucky he didn't run out of road there, but Jones taking a lot of chances.
Davy Jones wins the battle of the Jones boys. He leads Juan Fangio, Oscar Larari, Jeff Brabham, and David Tennyson. There's your top 5 in Camel Lights. We are back at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, about midway between Cleveland and Columbus in the hills of northern Ohio. There is Davy Jones, who took the pole with a record lap at just over 115 miles an hour, averaging about 92 miles an hour around the racetrack now. In fact,
we see him most of the time take a nice wide line. In fact, he goes over the concrete patch there. You can see the concrete patch. Oh, it's Oscar Larari, who was running in a third place position. Larari loses control of his car. This is actually the carousel corner.
And being off the track, he's going to lose third place. Here comes Jeff Brabham with headlights on, moving up from 4th into 3rd, going around one of the Camel Lights entries.
Larari still stuck in the grass. Luckily, he didn't get off and do too much damage. We saw Brabham's fishtail out of turn 1 as he puts the power on, but his Larari had to back up. Now he's back on the racetrack. This is the front pit straight, and he heads off on another lap, still fishtailing.
He went in with the front end of that Porsche into the tire wall. Impossible to know whether he damaged it. Larari sideways.
He's still sideways. The tires must be worn out on this car. That's what happens when you run too long. Here's a replay. Look at this. Simply, the rear end gets away from a long, lazy slide. Now he's on the grass. No braking power because the grass is so wet. And then he actually hits the Nissan guardrail.
Meanwhile, in the Camel Lights class, here's the overall leader, Fermin Velez of Spain, and the number 44 Norwegian Cruise Line Scandia Perry Ellis Buick-powered kudzu chassis. There's the second place car of Charles Morgan. Make that third place car. He got around the Acura right there, Parker Johnstone. So your order is Velez, then Ruggiero Melgrati, and then Charles Morgan. Now down into the pits comes the Toyota of the second place racer, Juan Fangio. Here's Marty.
The winner of last week's race, Juan Manuel Fangio, brings the car in second place at this point. This is their regular routine stop. They're putting fresh rain tires all the way around, washing the windscreen, and almost hooked up into the windshield wiper. Luckily, they did not pull that off. The car seems to be going smoothly as far as the motor is concerned. Juan pointing to some debris on the inside that he'd like to have cleared away. He's also experiencing a little bit of fog and is now ready to come down. He'll get ready to pull out.
Juan Fangio back en route. He will not give up second place, but he will trail leader Davy Jones by an even greater increment now. Here comes the Camel Lights leader, Velez.
Obviously a ventilation problem on the inside of those Toyotas. What Fangio was pointing at is the drivers look out through the corner of the windshield down to the apex of the corners. That was the area that he wanted to have cleaned inside.
There is Charles Morgan from Conway, Arkansas, man who owns a computer software business in his real life, getting sideways in that corner. You notice the concrete patches in the corners, trying to provide a little extra traction and a little more durability.
Particularly in the dry, but often surface changes when you're in wet condition like this can actually cause the car to be very unstable. That may have been why Tommy Kendall lost traction earlier when we saw him spin. Oh, one of the Acura Camel Light cars almost loses control in turn one.
That is Parker Johnstone. Meanwhile, there is Velez. He has already lapped the red and yellow number 9 car being shared by Tom Hessert and Bob Shader.
What a perfect sponsor for a wet and windy day like today. Norwegian Cruise Lines happily plodding along in the water, just like the cruise ships.
Fermin Velez, like most of the racers who come over from Europe to run in the Camel Lights class, very, very experienced in the wet. The same is true of GTP. Last year, a fairly unknown Englishman by the name of Perry McCarthy came over, got into a Chevy-Spice, and was absolute magic in the wet. Back on point, Davy Jones. Now, we have word from the course that Davy has been off the racetrack in the keyhole. We'll have to watch and see if there's any overt damage to the car.
It looks fine at the moment. He hasn't made his pit stop yet, but Jones has been off the racetrack. We don't know whether it was in traffic or what happened, but we're looking very closely, and I can't see any damage on the Jag.
There you see the crew. That is Tony Dow on the left, the team manager for the Tom Walkinshaw Racing Bud Light Jaguar team. And Jones is going to come in and have the crew check it over. Now, this is a 2-hour timed race, and this is very close to his scheduled stop.
You can have a good close look at the front. Nothing wrong. No nose cone damage. That's usually the first thing that breaks when a car gets off the racetrack. Interestingly enough, Davy Jones has very good vision through his windscreen, so he doesn't have a ventilation problem.
This is Juan Fangio, the second place car, back on the far corner of the racetrack. Here comes Jones out of the pits. No way Fangio is going to get close to him. He will maintain the lead.
Perfect stop for Jones. Got away with that off-course excursion. It was actually up in the keyhole, which is turn 2. He went through the gravel trap. Luckily, he didn't get stuck and it didn't hit the barrier, because Jones was fortunate, particularly after Lime Rock, to get away without having a major incident here.
Now, this is the battle for 5th place. David Tennyson on the left. Not terribly experienced in GTP cars. He was a Camel Lights competitor a year ago. The number 12 car is Tommy Kendall. Both are Chevrolet powered. Kendall's 6.5 liter. David Tennyson's 6 liters.
And you can see that Kendall is very much faster than Tennyson, under braking into the corner. That's where he hopes to make his pass. Again, he closes up. Tennyson turns down, though, takes the line, as he's entitled to. But now Kendall comes down the inside. Not going to make it here. Not going to make it here. Look at the visibility here. Can you imagine what it's like in Kendall's car? Following the spray, as well as the visibility, as well as the gray murkiness left from the other cars.
Delicate balance tried to be achieved by the engineers. Ventilation in the cars versus aerodynamic efficiency. You can't let a whole lot of air in the car because that means aerodynamic drag. Tommy Kendall spurned by David Tennyson, really driving well defensively here.
And David Tennyson is driving well defensively, and he is entitled to take the line that he wants. Kendall has to get around him, which makes it more difficult for him. But now look, he closes up under braking up at the keyhole.
Sharp right-hand 180-degree corner. There used to be an extra set of S's in that corner, hence it's named the keyhole. Now it's simply like the end of a test tube. Straight up, turn around, straight back down the backside.
Tennyson pulls out about 4 to 5 car lengths, and then again Kendall closes up under braking.
There's a look at the young David Tennyson, once voted the most improved driver in the Camel Lights class in his first full season of GTP racing this year. Kendall up the inside in the S's, pulls off the pass for 5th.
And Tennyson left the door open for about a split second. It was too wide, turning into the uphill left-hander, and Kendall in a flash was down the inside.
Tommy Kendall moves up into 5th. Mid-Ohio, Davy Jones, who set the outright lap record in qualifying here at Mid-Ohio. There's Oscar Larari into the pits. We saw him off the racetrack once. This, I would guess, Derek Daly, is probably a scheduled stop.
And I would say he'd probably change all 4 tires, because we saw him get very sideways on a lot of occasions, eventually left the racetrack. So I would presume his tires are worn out and he needs some new boots.
That promotes Tommy Kendall up into 4th place from 14th in this race. You see Larari as the Yost Racing crew finishes his pit stop. David Tennyson will move up into 5th place. Larari will come back on the racetrack out of the top 5.
Yost has 2 cars here. Yost has been one of the long-time Porsche 962 private entrants and has decided to do the full season here at IMSA this year.
There is Jeff Brabham now in 3rd position. Running behind Davy Jones and Juan Manuel Fangio. We expect a lot of pit stops now since we're past the halfway mark. Here comes David Tennyson, 5th place when he pitted.
A lot of modifications done to this Spice. This is the chassis they used last year, but the rear end treatment is very much like the Jaguar, which is the fashion in Group C in Europe, and has now made its way over here to the IMSA series also.
What makes it distinctive is that rear wing detached from the race car, held on by a single or double post. Now here is Oscar Larari. He will move back into 5th place due to Tennyson's stop, but he is about to be put another lap down by the race leader, Davy Jones.
And Davy Jones continues to set a tremendous pace here. It's very difficult when the car is this good to actually back off and go slow, because you can lose concentration.
David Tennyson with that distinctive engine note from that small block Chevy V8.
Sponsored by Denon Hi-Fi and Video. They were his sponsors all through his Camel Lights series, and now they're in Camel GTP. As we go back to Jeff Brabham, we must be due for his pit stop. Brabham, who still has some sore neck problems after his tremendous crash at Road Atlanta, comes into the pit lane.
The 4-time defending Camel GT champion in 3rd place in points, looking for his 5th. Here's Marty.
Jeff Brabham brings the number 83 Nissan into the pits for his one and only scheduled stop. They'll go to work changing all 4 tires. And the crew wants to know if maybe the drivers are the driest people in Mid-Ohio sports car course right now, because everybody else is soaking wet. This stop, in fact, they are not making changes. They're going to leave the same rubber on. All they're going to do is go for fuel. Jeff just waiting for the signal, and he's back out and stalls the car.
Interesting, Bob, what the crew did there. They actually took the guns out, and made sure the wheels were tight. They actually tightened them, because these wheels have been known to come loose after long sessions.
There is David Tennyson now in 6th place with fresh rubber and a new load of fuel. Bryce Cobb runs in 7th behind him. Tommy Kendall makes his pit stop.
No tires for Kendall. We can see that. We can see, oh, that's his crew chief stands in front of him with a stopwatch. That's obviously he's going to put a timed amount of fuel into Kendall's car.
And that will move David Tennyson up. He continues to battle with Bryce Cobb. But they are well behind, as you can see. I was about to say that Tennyson will move up, but not if Tommy Kendall right there can get back on the racetrack.
Timing the fuel, they want to know exactly how many gallons could go in a certain amount of time. That's where they're hoping to get Kendall back out in front of this group here. They do manage it.
Bryce Cobb going underneath David Tennyson. Once again, youth versus experience.
light, nimble little Mazda gets the job done, sneaks down the inside of the carousel to second gear, one of the slowest corners on the racetrack. Now we're back with Brabham, who's about to have his hands full with Davy Jones, who'll try and put another lap on Jeff Brabham.
Should Davy Jones get around Jeff Brabham, that will leave but 2 cars on the lead lap. The first and second place cars of Davy Jones and Juan Fangio. Jones absolutely dominant at Mid. Back at Mid-Ohio, there is the leader in the Camel Lights class, Fermín Velez of Spain. Now in the Camel Lights, you must make a pit stop and change drivers. You don't have to do that in the GTP category. Standing by, waiting to relieve Velez, is this man, Andy Evans. Wearing that black device, it's actually a helmet restraint that keeps the helmet from moving too far in the event of an impact with something solid. Signed by Jim Downing's brother-in-law, Dr. Bob Hubbard of Michigan State University. Here's Marty.
Team boss Andy Evans stands by to take over from Fermín Velez. This is your leader in Camel Lights. Now talk about a size differential. Wait till you see these two guys. Fermín and Andy over a foot difference, just similar to Charles Morgan and Tommy Riggins in the sister car in this Buick Kudzu Scandia Perry Ellis team. Andy Evans, his dream has always been to own his own race team, and he's finally got it. And he's got himself a fine operation going right now. Fermín has put him in the lead. The car's down. They did not change tires. They're basically looking to make an adjustment on the mirror. And he is back underway, almost stalls it, but saves it.
Fermín Velez, who shared many Camel Lights drives with the champion 2 years ago, Tomas Lopez of Mexico. He's standing by with Marty Reid.
What's been the difference for you guys? Was it in your setup?
Well, the car was handling very well, and the engine was fine. I mean, it was perfect. The tires, everything. I think we have a fantastic car for these conditions. So
now the hardest part, you got to watch Andy bring it home.
I hope so. The only thing he needs to do is stay on the track. So we'll see.
Spoken like the hired gun out there to put the car out in front for the boss.
Stay on the racetrack. Well, that's what he's doing right now. Behind one of the Acura cars. Got to be careful here. One of the GTP cars, that was Davy Jones, just went by him on the outside. So he's got a good view of a lot of hot action right now. And Kendall now all over Jeff Brabham.
This is for third place. Tommy Kendall up from 14th due to problems in qualifying, challenging the 4-time defending Camel GT champion for third place in this race.
And the conditions do not get any better. Still raining, still gray, still murky, still the biggest problem the drivers have is the visibility. Look at Brabham, gets that thing sideways under power, and then Kendall does exactly the same thing on this long run down the backstretch, 165 miles an hour, even in the rain.
You can see there is a line drying out. Both cars occupying it right now. That's going to make it a little extra treacherous should one of them try to get offline to make a pass. Twin-turbo V6 Nissan just behind him. The big, booming Chevy V8 normally aspirated engine.
And it's under braking that Kendall closes up, but not so much with Brabham.
Since 1988, Nissan and Jeff Brabham have absolutely dominated Camel GT racing. There are a lot of rumors about what might happen to the team and its ace driver in the future. Here's Marty to answer them in an IMSA manufacturer update.
Over the past 3 years, Nissan has dominated IMSA GTP racing, winning 3 consecutive manufacturers' championships. But here in 1992, Team Nissan finds itself fighting an uphill battle against Jaguar and Toyota.
We can only go out and do the best job we can with what we have, and you know, the Nissan's running 3 seconds a lap faster than what we were doing here last year. It's just that the Jaguar's running, you know, 8 seconds a lap faster than what we were doing here last year, and there's really nothing we can do about it because it is a totally different car, different class, runs to different rules, and the rules obviously are a lot better for them than they are for us right now.
Nissan has had success in 1992. The team won at Miami and finished second at Lime Rock, but sandwiched in between was the disaster at Road Atlanta. Chip Robinson had something let go in the rear end of his number 84 Nissan. He slammed into the guardrail, ending up on his lid. Miraculously, he came away with nothing more than a broken bone in his shoulder. Teammate Jeff Brabham, 100 yards from where Chip Robinson went into the rail, did the same thing, but it took corner workers 10 minutes to get him out from underneath the wreckage. He had a very stiff neck, and Team Nissan had a stiff problem. They were down to 1 car.
Well, I don't think it affects me too much because my side of the team hasn't changed, and I still have to get out there and work with Trevor Harris and the rest of my guys on my team to try and get the most out of the race car. Obviously we haven't got Chip's input right now because sometimes we go in different directions to see what was better. So it puts, I suppose, if you're going to say pressure on us, it puts makes it a little bit more difficult to get the most out of the car because you have less time to do things on one car instead of two.
How are you dealing with all the rumors as far as what Team Nissan's going to do in '93?
Well, I'm the wrong person to ask. I probably know as little about it as you do, and I suggest you go and ask the Kaz Kasners and the Don Diebendorfs of this world, what the plans are, because, you hear a lot of rumors right now, and not all of them are true, and you just have to, from my point of view, I just sit back and see what happens, because, I'm sure I'll be doing something with them next year.
It's interesting, Jeff says they're 3 seconds faster than they were last year with this same car. However, they need 3 more. This car now is just a bit too old. They need a new one, and they have a new Group C car that has been built and being developed at the moment by Bob Earl. And interestingly enough, Kaz Kastner told me the car would be for sale for a variety of engines if somebody wants it. We see David Tennyson has made contact with somebody.
From the corner workers, we understand that he made contact with Parker Johnstone, still running 3rd in the Camel Lights class. So we'll have to see if that affects the young Canadian. Running just outside the top 5 in the GTP division.
It would be better if that debris that's now hanging on the side of the car would actually break off. He wouldn't have to stop. But if that gets under that left front wheel, that could easily tear the nose cone off that car.
And Tom Kendall is spinning in the number 12 car.
Oh, Kendall's hard work of the afternoon goes away again. He spends so much time catching people up and doing a great job. Now, this is his 2nd spin of the day, but as of yet, he has not lost his position.
And it is 4th position, but he has lost a lot of ground to Jeff Brabham in 3rd. That's the man he had his eye on. Nothing but Camel Lights cars behind him, so the order remains Jones, Fangio, Brabham, Kendall, and Larari. Making his way through a pair of Mazdas, Davy Jones and the white number 2 leading the race as he has from the green flag. The Mazda teammates Bryce Cobb and Pete Halsmer go door to door there, but Halsmer is 1 lap down to his teammate. Cobb runs in 6th position. Overall Camel Lights leader number 44 Andy Evans steps aside for number 2 Jones.
And Andy Evans has muscle and horsepower all around him at the moment, because no sooner does he get Jones past him when Bryce Cobb is absolutely all over him.
Now notice what happened moments ago in the number 44 car. We heard from Reid Velez say all Andy Evans has to do is keep it on the racetrack. Down into turn 1, he went just behind Dan Marvin in the 4th place Acura-Spice. Around went Marvin. Hard on the brakes went Evans, pointed it to the right, but Marvin spun back, pointed it to the left. That's dodging a bullet big time.
The rule of thumb is aim for the car, because when you get there, he'll be gone, you hope. But I'm glad to see Andy Evans did get on the brakes and slow that car down, because the safest way when you're leading is always the best way.
There's been another change in the Camel Lights class. The number 63 blue and yellow car there has been lapped, but the number 45 Buick Kudzu, shared by Charles Morgan, now being driven by this man. Tommy Riggins has passed Costas Los in the Acura and taken over 2nd place in the Lights class. Back up front, Davy Jones, who has broken Michael Andretti's outright lap record here in Mid-Ohio, set of course in a Lola Chevy Indy car. Jones has lapped everybody but this man, Juan Fangio, running in 2nd place in the Toyota.
Davy Jones, a perfect day so far. He made 1 mistake, got into the gravel trap at the keyhole. Didn't cost him any time because it happened just before his pit stop. But it is phenomenal to think that these cars are so fast, and in the dry qualifying, he did break that record of Michael Andretti.
I think we could call it semi-dry. Davy Jones, by 0.2 of a second, nipped Michael's record. Of course, these cars do have the advantage of all-enveloping bodywork, which makes them more aerodynamically clean than an Indy car with those big wheels exposed at all 4 corners. Nevertheless, this is serious speed, folks.
You're absolutely right. These cars generate so much more downforce than an Indy car. It allows them, although they're heavier, to go through these corners, uphill, left hill, down through these S's, extremely fast.
There comes Costas Los. Notice the windshield wiper. Gone all well, Gaga.
It's not a windshield wiper anymore. It's now vertical instead of horizontal. And Jeff Brabham pulled out easily because I'm sure Costas Voss is having trouble just seeing where he's running with only 1 lap to go.
On the final lap, Davy Jones looking for his 3rd checkered flag, make that his 3rd maximum points race in 1992. He did not win Daytona, but he gathered maximum points from a car that was ineligible. And now he will forge his lead in the championship. He was 9 points ahead of Juan Fangio coming in. He will expand that nicely over the 2nd place Fangio. There is the happy crew. Davy Jones with his 2nd checkered flag, but making his 3rd victory of the season.
And a sigh of relief from everybody as we see the Camel Lights come around. Andy Evans to take his win, but a sigh of relief from everybody who wins this race, because 2 hours in the rain is very difficult.
A 1-2 for Buick in the Camel Lights class. That will allow them to close up in the Camel Lights manufacturer's chase. Flashing the headlights in overall victory, Davy Jones, who will begin to celebrate in victory lane, and we'll be back to talk with him. Back at Mid-Ohio, notice something about these standings. Davy Jones for Jaguar, Fangio for Toyota, Brabham for Nissan, Tom Kendall for Chevy, and Oscar Larari for Porsche. 5 different makes in the top 5 positions. We said Davy Jones had to come through at the top of the show, and he did, Derek.
Well, the team delivered because they built the car in 5 days. Then they gave it to Jones, and he delivered. That's what you must do when you're in the top flight of racing, as Davy Jones is now with the Jaguar team.
He took the pole, he set fast lap of the race, and led every lap. He's in victory lane now with Marty Reid.
I just want to know one thing. Are you the driest man in the place? Because your crew's soaked, everybody's soaked.
Well, it's a great car, and it's probably the first car that I've ever raced through the wet where I haven't absolutely got soaked inside. I just got to thank the whole Bud Light crew. If it wasn't for them and their dedication and their hard work the past few days, this all wouldn't have been possible this weekend. And, you know, nobody really knows what it's like going into having a wet race. Thank you, Dan. Thanks very much. Good job. And, you know, once I got a good start, I just settled into a nice rhythm, and I just, you know, tried to set a pace from there.
Got to ask you, Granny Brabham didn't get in the car. Why not?
Well, I think the only flights leaving to Pasadena, Australia are at 2 o'clock. So since they delayed the race a half hour, she had to go ahead and go. So they let me go ahead and fill in for her.
You did a great job.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Marty.
Don't even begin to ask us about Granny Brabham. You'll have to read the Enthusiast magazines to find out about that. Here are your results in Camel Lights. Andy Evans and Fermin Velez over Charles Morgan and Tommy Riggins. Rogero Melgrati and Costas Los finished 3rd. Let's get back down to victory lane and meet our Camel Lights winners with Marty.
Well, this is one happy team. Not only is the boss, Andy Evans, in the winning car, but you swept them 1-2.
It was great. I mean, Mike Lozano's made a great